Good morning, I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's weather video for Monday, April 28th, 2025. We're talking about major severe weather expected across portions of the northern Midwest, especially for Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and other parts of the Midwest today, and in general across the central part of the United States. Major severe weather expected today. Um, Pretty decent potential that we could have a pretty sizable tornado outbreak tonight. We're going to talk about what to expect, including timing everything out. Glad you could join us for today's video. Let's get started by taking a look at the latest Storm Prediction Center outlook for today. This is the day one convective outlook, and you can see, especially right over Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, there is a moderate risk in effect for severe weather today, and we even have an enhanced risk that extends beyond that to pretty much the Great Lakes region, all the way from the northern Midwest, and extends down into the plains and some portions of Kansas and northern Missouri too. And we also have across portions of the southern plains in Texas and Oklahoma another enhanced risk for potentially severe weather as well. So quite a widespread area where we could potentially see severe weather across the central half of the United States today, but it's really going to center on Minnesota and Wisconsin in the northern Midwest, especially when it comes to our biggest risk today, which will be tornadoes and potentially hail, but especially with the tornado risk. Look at this 15% chance that we will get significant tornadoes across portions of the northern Midwest. And we also have that infamous hatched risk today, which extends all the way once again in the Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin area. And once again, the hatched risk means the area where we have a 10% or greater probability of a significant tornado. So the setup is very ripe today for potentially a very significant severe weather outbreak. And this is going to happen as we head into the evening tonight and into the overnight hours, especially once we get past sundown, is when the tornado risk will be at its highest. We'll time it out though with the models in just a moment. But really quickly, let's take a look at some of these other risks, because yes, we have the tornado risk, but there's also a significant risk as well for wind. That's up to a 30% chance. And we also have hail too. And this extends all the way from southern Texas up into northern Wisconsin and Minnesota, with a 30% chance in a lot of areas, and a hatched risk too, where we might see 2-inch diameter hail or larger. So large hail and potentially some pretty significant tornadoes expected for today. But severe weather, we'll kind of touch upon this a little bit. Why is this not loading? Sometimes this map takes quite a bit of time to load, but here we go. Tomorrow, severe weather risk does continue. So we have quite a bit of severe weather expected tonight, and it'll continue tomorrow, once again, for quite a large swath of the United States, extending all the way from Texas up into the Northeast, if you can believe it, upstate New York under a slight risk, and portions of western upstate New York, near the Great Lakes region, and potentially northwestern Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio under an enhanced risk. The tornado risk much smaller tomorrow, but the risk will be there for potentially wind, and we even have hail too. But we'll probably touch upon that at a later time. Today is really all going to be about the risk that we have today, which is a moderate risk once again for portions of the northern Midwest. And I'll time it out in terms of what can you expect in terms of timing of when we will see the highest risk for severe weather, and especially for tornadoes, in just a moment. But really quickly, let's take a look at how conditions are looking at right now, at least in terms of current temperatures across the U.S. It's pretty warm, especially across most of the eastern United States. We see temperatures currently in the 60s. New York City at 66, and in general across portions of the central and northern Midwest right now, for the most part, temperatures in the 60s. Still portions of central and northern Wisconsin in the 50s right now, and even portions of northern Minnesota in the 40s. But St. Paul, Minnesota, 61, Rochester, Minnesota 59, and you can already see where we see a surge in warm air and moisture that'll occur. Especially when we have these winds coming very strong out of the south. Lots of moisture that's going to surge from the Gulf of Mexico. I'll show you the dew point forecast in just a moment, but dew points will be very high. And conditions in general will just be very favorable today for potentially a significant severe weather outbreak. And you can see as well in these kind of wind direction little arrows here, you can see where our low pressure system is, and it's currently over South Dakota right now. And you can see temperatures all across the South in the 70s already, and it's only 10 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Central time. So temperatures are going to warm up today pretty significantly, and throughout most of the central United States, we're probably going to see temperatures widespread in the 70s and 80s today. So lots of warm air and lots of moisture, already some factors that you already need for severe weather. And here's a quick look at the satellite loop across the United States right now. There you can see it. This is our system that is going to produce potentially severe weather across portions of the northern Midwest. The low pressure over South Dakota right now. This is going to move off to the north-northeast. This is bringing quite a bit of rain and unsettled weather for portions of the northern plains, and kind of extending a little bit into the northwest part of the United States. And we also have as well a cold front that extends from this low pressure all the way south into Texas, and we kind of have some cloud cover there as well. And then for the most part across the eastern half of the United States, good news, especially after this weekend. I know for sure here in the Northeast, especially here in New York City, it was very chilly yesterday. It was a nice day in terms of weather. We had the sun out, but it was just really chilly and very gusty. Today's going to be much warmer though. Probably going to get into the 70s, and in general across most of the eastern and central half of the United States, we're going to get into the 70s and 80s. Definitely going to feel a lot like late spring and early summer, especially as we head towards throughout the week this week. And it makes sense that we have, as a result, the potential for pretty significant severe weather, especially today and tomorrow. So let's time it out by taking a look at the GFS model. At least over the next several hours, this is at least the 6E run. So this is from early this morning on the GFS, and you can see we have our low pressure over South Dakota, 995 millibars, so quite a significant low pressure system over the northern Midwest. And then this slowly moves off to the northeast. Will bring heavy rain to portions of the northern Midwest, all the way extending from Wyoming up into the Dakotas and northern Minnesota and up into southeastern Canada. We're going to have quite some unsettled weather for majority of today, and then obviously on the southern extent of that, where we have a cold front that'll then extend south, that's where we will expect the severe weather. And this is really just a classic setup. We have a huge high pressure centered off the East Coast, and especially if you look at these isobars, strong southwesterly flow around this ridge of high pressure. We're going to have quite a bit of moisture to be able to tap into from the Gulf of Mexico and in general across the south. And then as this low pressure moves to the east, the cold front moves as well. We'll have quite a bit of rain across the Midwest and then extending into the central United States. And then that lasts throughout tomorrow and then into Wednesday. And especially moving a little bit away from severe weather for a moment, especially in terms of rain across the central and southern portions of the United States, especially across Texas, Oklahoma, and the Missouri, Arkansas region this week. We're going to have more in terms of potentially very heavy rainfall. We could see totals, I think, as much as maybe even a foot of rain in some areas, but I'm not entirely sure. But at least in terms of excessive rainfall, we do have a moderate chance for a pretty good portion of this week across the central and southern, the south central region of the United States. So keep that in mind. Then it looks like as we head into Wednesday and Thursday, yeah, you could see across portions of Arkansas and Missouri quite a bit of heavy rain, and then that generally moves off on into the east, and we'll probably see some rainy conditions across portions of the eastern half of the States, and that extends all the way up into the Northeast. But our biggest concern for today will be this low pressure in the northern Midwest, because this will help set up for what will be a pretty significant severe weather outbreak tonight. And I'll show you as well what the setup will be, because if you look at the dew points, look at this, quite a bit of significant warm dew points extending all the way from the south. Once again, we have that ridge of high pressure, very strong south and southwesterly flow all the way from the Gulf of Mexico up into the northern Midwest. We have dew points, especially over portions of Wisconsin, most of Iowa, and even into most of central and southern Minnesota, as far north as central and southern Minnesota, and pretty much the entire state of Wisconsin, dew points up in the 60s. So lots of moisture, lots of humidity, and that's definitely very, very ample for severe weather. And then generally high dew points last across a majority of the central and eastern United States, all the way from the Great Lakes down on into the south. Look at this, 60s, all the way from Texas up into the Great Lakes. That's certainly not going to be pleasant. So we're going to have warm and muggy conditions. Makes sense why we have severe weather today and tomorrow, especially. That'll extend all the way from the south up into potentially the Northeast, and even look here into portions of upstate New York and Ohio. You could also see as well as we head into tomorrow and Wednesday, dew points will be in the 60s as well. So lots of moisture. It's going to be a very warm week this week, and it makes sense why we have severe weather tonight. But really quickly, want to zoom in. So we looked at the overall pattern with the GFS. Let's zoom in now on the actual, mesoscale pattern, specifically over the northern Midwest for tonight. I'm going to show you the HRRR in just a moment, but let's really quickly first look at the NAM model with the 12Z run. It's actually loading right now, so we kind of have hot off the press model runs to show you. How nice is that? And let's really quickly roll the model run out. So we have our low pressure once again over South Dakota. You probably know that by now. That'll then move off to the northeast. It'll deepen slightly once we get to this afternoon over Minnesota. And then you could see as we head into the evening hours over Wisconsin, you start seeing a bunch of these thunderstorm cells begin to pop up. And then eventually, this is how now roughly around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tonight Eastern time. So this is roughly 7, 8 o'clock local time. You notice here a lot of these popcorn thunderstorms beginning to develop over Wisconsin and also portions of Minnesota too. And this is where the tornado risk is especially going to come into play, because especially where you see a lot of these discrete thunderstorm cells being indicated on the models, that is the indication for we'll probably have very pretty significant chance for supercells, which will eventually probably go on to potentially become probably maybe some long track tornadoes within this region. I mean, you saw the Storm Prediction Center once again, just to rehash, we have up to a 15% chance for tornadoes and a hatched risk potentially for significant tornadoes. And this certainly has that look, especially when you see a lot of these discrete thunderstorm cells across pretty much the entire state of Wisconsin, and especially across central and the southeastern portion of Minnesota. And this threat really seems like it'll be as we head into the evening and overnight hours tonight, before all this then clears out as we head into the morning hours of tomorrow. And that's not good as well, because especially if this is an evening and nighttime threat, especially when we're talking about the potential for significant tornadoes. That is not pleasant, dealing with tornadoes in the dead of night where you can't see anything. You can't see if when where a tornado is coming, or even how large it is or how significant it might be. You just have a tornado in the dead of night in the night sky where you can't see anything. That is certainly very very scary. And then the last part I want to show you is the 850 millibar wind, because this will really be the highlight of the tornado risk, especially once we head into the evening hours. So this is 4 or 5 o'clock tonight, and even into 8 or 9 o'clock. Look at how strong the winds are so this is the 850 millibar level. So this is roughly 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. When we talk about the 850 millibar vorticity, whenever it comes to, kind of picking out when we might get tropical development during hurricane season, this is that level of the atmosphere, but we're looking at the winds. So we're looking at the low level jet, and just notice, man, look at how strong these winds are, especially over the state of Wisconsin, um, and across portions of the northern Midwest. This is tonight. And this is very significant. Look at these winds, 50 knots, and even some areas is seeing as high, with some of these purples, especially over southeastern Canada, although that's not really where the highest tornado risk will be. But you get what I'm saying. Look at how strong some of these winds will be, with the low level jet, especially as we head into this evening. This is very, very significant, and look at how strong it especially gets over portions of Wisconsin as we head into roughly 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. That's probably when the tornado risk will be at its highest. This is very significant because when we have very strong winds like this in the lower levels, um, this is very, very positive sign, especially for tornado and supercell development. Usually when we talk about, hurricane development, we always talk about, the need for the upper level winds and the winds in the atmosphere to be low to allow for thunderstorms to organize and, eventually develop into tropical systems. When it comes to the development of severe thunderstorms and supercells that would eventually, produce tornadoes, it's the opposite. When we have stronger winds, that definitely sets a better sign, or at least tells us that the atmosphere might potentially be very favorable for tornado development. And just look at this across portions, of Minnesota, Iowa, and especially Wisconsin, this evening, roughly 4, 5, 6 o'clock, and then it lasts all the way into, the midnight hours, and then just after midnight, before, once we get to around early tomorrow morning and into the morning hours, then all this mess clears out and weather conditions will probably improve. But looks like for tonight, once again, very significant tornado risk expected. And if you're in the risk area, especially if you're in the moderate risk area, please, pay attention to the skies, pay attention to whatever warnings and watches may be issued. Definitely going to get tornado watches issued tonight, but especially pay attention whenever you have a tornado warning. Go to the most interior part of your building, or basement if you have it. And if you're not in the warned area, but you maybe have some people in the warned area, please let them know, to plan ahead today, because there might be a pretty significant chance, for potentially, tornadoes and significant severe weather, tonight. So with that being said, hopefully you found this video very informative. Hopefully you found, um, any piece of information that might have brought a little bit more clarity to, your day today, especially when it comes to, severe weather, and tornadoes. Hopefully, you found this video informative, and I really appreciate it that if you do, please like, comment, subscribe, and also follow me on Twitter at Danilo Evangelista. I'll probably post some updates there today. And if things do get pretty intense tonight, I might do another video update later tonight, and maybe even a live stream. We'll see. If not, though, please stay safe, watch the skies, and of course, peace, love, and kindness to you all. And if I don't talk to you again tonight, I'll probably talk to you later this week when we do our typical weather outlook video on Saturday. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe tonight. And we'll talk again very soon.